Today on StampTV, I'm going to show you a fun technique called stenciled color blocking. This is a great way to add lots of color to your card without adding lots of extra cardstock. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to make this card project. First, you're going to need some ink, and I've chosen some of the Gina Designs inks. The colors I'm using are Sweet Mango, Grass Green, Black Onyx, Ocean Mist, and Innocent Pink. Then you're going to need some sponge daubers, and I'm going to use 4 of them because I'm going to be creating 4 different color blocks. Then for stamps, I'm using 2 of the stamps from the new Journey of the Heart StampTV kit. I'm also going to use my Stamp-a-ma-jig, and that's to line up my greeting perfectly. However, if you don't have a Stamp-a-ma-jig, that's okay. The greetings are pretty easy to line up. Just line it up onto your acrylic block, stamp it once to make sure it's stamping straight, and then you should be okay. I'm also going to use some mono adhesive. This is the dot kind of mono adhesive. I'm going to use a Spellbinders die. This is a rectangle die from their classic rectangles. And then I need a ruler and a pencil, some Post-it notes, and for cardstock, I'm using the Gina Designs Grass Green, some Black Onyx, and some of our white cardstock. Now, to begin, I want to show you that I've made a stencil. And this stencil was cut from a piece of cardstock that's the same size as the cardstock I'm going to be working with. And this piece of cardstock measures 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. And then what I've done is I've marked it at 1 7/8 of an inch and made a line down. And then I marked it at 2.5 inches and then made a line across. So this is 2.5 inches and I drew a line, 1 7/8 inches and I drew a line. Now for placing the die, what I did was I placed the die so that it was just a little bit over the line on both sides. So about halfway between the open part of the die and the outside part of the die. So I just placed it halfway down on that side and halfway down on that side. You can see that. And I cut that out. So now I have a stencil mark, and you can see I've used this one already to make a card. Now the first thing I'm going to do to use my stencil, and keep this because you can use it over and over again, I'm going to line this up with my piece of cardstock so that it lines up perfectly, and I'm just going to grab some paper here. And I'm going to choose my first color, which is going to be some grass green. So I'm going to just use a little piece of paper here to figure out which one of my daubers I used for what color earlier today. That looks like blue. And there's my green one. All right. So I'm going to start by inking up this sponge dauber and then holding that piece of cardstock together, make sure it's lined up nice and straight together. I'm going to create a frame using a circular motion like that. So that's my first box. Now my next color I'm going to use is the Ocean Mist. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that frame around and put it on top here, like this. So you can see I did the top one. There's a little mark there. I did the top one, and now I'm going to do this opposite one. And again, making sure that they're lined up properly. I'm going to grab some of this ink and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make another box using this blue ink. So now I have 2 boxes. Sometimes a little bit of the sponge comes off. You gotta just blow that away. Okay. So now I have 2 boxes. Now I'm going to move to my next color, which is going to be the Sweet Mango. And I'm going to flip this around to the other side and put the Sweet Mango up in this corner. So you can see how this stencil is going to make them perfectly spaced because you're only using one box. So they're going to be equally positioned from each of the four corners. All right. And make sure that that is lined up. It's always good to just check it. And then hold that down. And I'm going to make a Sweet Mango box here. There we go. And the last one I'm going to make is going to be the Innocent Pink. Grab that color. And the last sponge dauber, ink that up real well, and then again position it and create that final rectangle. These are nice pastel colors for spring. I know we're all thinking spring right about now, aren't we? All right, so there is my final one. And let's just get rid of these extra little pieces from the sponge. All right, so now I have a really pretty pastel color block look here. Now I'm going to grab some Post-it notes and I'm going to outline each of these boxes using some Post-it notes. And this is really fun to do. You can use all kinds of different stamps for this, or you can do what I'm going to do. I'm only going to use one stamp and just position it differently in each of the boxes. So once you have those in place, then you're going to grab some of that black Onyx ink, and I'm using this daisy stamp. Ink it up real well, and I'll stamp it once, and then I'm going to turn it, stamp it again, and then a little bit right here. There we go. So now I can peel those layers off, and you can see I have a pretty daisy pattern right there in that box. I'm going to flip it around and do this one now, give that one a chance to dry a little bit, because you do have a couple layers of ink there. And do the same thing again with these Post-it notes. And you can reuse the Post-it notes. You don't have to get new Post-it notes each time. If you want to, that's fine. They will get a little less sticky with each time you lift them and replace them. All right, so this one I'm going to stamp a little bit off. I'm not going to have one quite so close to the center. Here and one in the corner. There we go. So that's my next block. All right. So now I'm going to do this Sweet Mango one. I'll save the Innocent Pink for last, and we're going to add a greeting into that one. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. And don't worry if it's not perfectly straight. I mean, you can, play with it a little bit, but because of that little extra ridge from the Post-it note, you usually get a little bit of shallow stamping right along the edge anyway. All right, so we'll stamp one here. Let's do one there. See what I mean? It's a little shallow in the corner there. One here. And just a little piece of one right there. Okay, so now for my final one, I'm going to start that one by stamping the greeting first. So you can see how nice that looks. Now, if you have a big block greeting, you could use something like that there and not put any flowers. Now, let's get the Stamp-a-majig all set up here. For those of you who have this tool, I'm going to, let me move this out of the way. I'm going to position the transparent sheet right in the right angle of the tool here. And I'm going to ink up my stamp. And then I'm going to stamp it into the right angle of the tool onto the sheet. So now I have the greeting. Now I'm going to position it where I want it on the card. So you could have it coming off if you wanted. That would look cute, but I'm going to put it right in there, right inside the box. Okay, and once I get that into position, I'm going to replace the tool and then ink it up again. I felt like I moved it, so I'm going to check it again. There we go. Oops. Yeah. And stamp. There we go. So now I have my thankful greeting. Now I'm going to add Post-it notes again. Same way. And finish this design off. My Post-it notes are all sticking to each other. And one more. There we go. Okay. And using that daisy stamp again, I'm going to stamp one here, a little bit of one here, and a little bit down at the bottom. So there's the final block with the greeting. Remove these. There we go. So now I'm going to grab my Scor-buddy, and you can use any scoring tool you want. If you don't have a scoring tool, you can also, if you have one of those paper cutters that has a little ridge in it, you can use the paper cutter and pick up the Scor tool. This is available on Scor-pal's website, and we may have some in our store too. I'm not sure what's left in inventory, but this is a great tool, and it can be used in pretty much any ridge that you have. So if you have that paper cutter, you can also use that. I'm going to flip this over, and on the Scor-buddy there are two little 1/8 of an inch notches here, and I'm going to use both of those. You can see I always pull it down a little bit so that I can start the tool in the groove. It makes it a little bit easier not to slip, and I'm going to use those two grooves right there. I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing on the other side. One groove and the second groove. And then I'm just going to do one going down each side. I'm just going to use the first groove going down the long way. And that'll just give it a little bit of interest, and it'll also even out the blocks a little bit. So you can see I have the different score lines there to even things out. Now while I have the Scor-buddy out, I'm going to score this piece of grass green cardstock at 4 1/4 inches. 1, 2, 3. And somebody mentioned I was flattening it out going this way against these ridges, and they said do it this way because then you won't get the ridges, any ridge marks. And although I haven't experienced that, I thought that was a really good idea to turn it. And so there is my nice fold in our heavy base weight cardstock. Okay, now I need that black panel, and I'm going to mount these two pieces together using some of the mono adhesive. This is a really nice little card layout if you're making boxes of cards to give to friends as gifts, because it's nice and flat, so you don't have to worry about it costing them any additional postage or anything like that. And then that whole panel will go right on top of that grass green. And you could make an assortment. You could use different colored card bases, including Sweet Mango, the Ocean Mist, and the Innocent Pink. Give them a set of 4, each one being a little different, and maybe using the different sprigs and leaves from the Journey of the Heart StampTV kit, and different greetings on each one. It would be a nice assortment of cards to give as a gift. And then there is my finished card project. Try this technique with warm neutral tones for masculine cards, or use metallic inks to add a little bit of sparkle.